Welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. I think we've had a tremendous year with the undertaking of getting the Hall of Fame back in place, and we have our laureate, Don Floyd, with us, so congratulations, Don. So today is pretty much the business side, and that by the end of the day I'll be out of a job, and that's a good thing. So.
All right, so I'm here to pitch in for Brad. Brad couldn't be here, but I'm just getting my hands or my arms around the whole development process that we do here at JASAN. If John, you want to advance that next slide?
Sure.
Just give you a report on how the year went. So the goal that we had, I would say that Brad had, as a committee had, was to raise a little around $26,000 and have 10 donors. Let's go ahead and flip ahead and tell you where we ended up. So we secured a little under that amount, and you see 75 donors, a membership of around what, 305?
Yep.
Okay, so keep that in mind. Let that sizzle for a minute. We're simmer, and I'm going to come back to it. We did add 23 new donors, and this past year was the second largest revenue for our organization. And then on top of that, when we pressed forward with the Professional Staff Hall of Fame, 12 members of our organization stepped up and kicked in another $7,250. So you can put the two together. We did over about $33,000 total. And again, it was a good year. All things considered, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Linda or John, that there was simply like a direct mail campaign of some sort that we executed to the membership, and that's casting, putting your line in the water. And I know Brad made a lot of calls, follow up with folks, especially past donors. Okay, so looking ahead, you want to move that forward. Again, we talked about 25% of our membership responded. I just think that we could move that number up, that bogey to 30 or 40%. Does that make sense, and is that doable? And I would say, yeah, it is. We may need a few more horses to help me pull the wagon, but I really want to push for that. I really do. And so we're going to think strategically how we're going to execute this with some social media and whatever we'll have to kind of back this all up. Again, coming up with why should people donate to JASAN? What's in it for them? So I think what we need to really kind of focus on. And then really merging, since we have the Professional Staff Hall of Fame, is going to become an annual event. Yes, Randal? Yeah. So we're going to have to merge both the efforts. So that comes part of the overall development plan. We're going to raise funds to support.
Let me just stop there. It could be an annual event.
Yeah, it could. There could be years that there is nobody in, but
right.
It's not.
The goal is
it is not going away.
Right.
Yeah.
We hope that will be an annual event. Certainly enough people left.
And probably will. I would guess for the next few years because we've had big lapse.
Yeah. So, all right. So then, Linda and I had a conversation back in the spring, and I followed up and did some homework on this. You all hear planned giving, right? We tried it in our own markets when we were running, and things that necessarily didn't work out well. But you see other organizations, college, universities, don't have great success with it. But thinking about this from a different kind of angle, I talked to Scott Riddle, who initially worked to talk this up with Gil, and Gil was around because Gil gave a planned gift to the national organization. I don't know the dollar amount.
He gave to JASAN $14,000.
Okay. So Scott and I talked, I think most of you all know when you retire from junior achievement, there is a group term insurance policy, Mind Your Life, for $25,000. Did you all know that?
Yes. The
Never goes down.
Well, it's 50 and it goes to 25, or at least it used to,
It's
but
25.
you had to have been in the JA medical plan.
Right.
So it's not an automatic to everybody.
Right. But there are go ahead.
I thought, Frank, I read where it drops down after a certain age, 75 or so, to 12.5. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, 25 is the least it would be.
So I checked with Mark Fiore at J headquarters and found out that a couple things. The main thing is there's over 250, I believe, retirees on that list that are eligible. And then secondly, thinking again from talking with Scott, so on, looking at that, would there be a possibility for, say, for you to designate that money to go to JASAN upon your departure? And the answer is no, can't be done that way, but we can certainly do it on our own accord with our own legal documents and so on. So I'm going to really kind of push for this, and I'd gladly, if I'm on that list, I'll volunteer to be the first one to sign up. Essentially add a piece of paper to my legal papers that say, hey, there's this check coming from Junior Achievement. When you get it, turn it around and send it back and tell them to put it into the legacy fund for JASAN or whatever we want to call it. Just think if we got 10 people to do that in 1 year at $250,000, not a bad nest egg to start this kind of approach, right? So I'm Irish and I'm stubborn, so we're going to really work and try to press on that to see if we can make it something that we can adopt as an organization. And I hope you'll support it. You can't feel financially, but at least say, hey, yeah, this makes sense if all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, we're doing it the right way. So I've been a Rotarian for forever and a day, and every time I go, my annual kind of review with Rotary, I get that piece of paper that is set in front of me and want me to designate a part of my estate to Rotary. And it's just a signature and I think a notary public seal, and it's done deal. I mean, I don't see this to be a huge lift for us to do from a legal perspective. But I'll continue to press on it, so.
And we'll have discussions in the executive committee as we go forward next year, and
Yeah.
have an understanding of what the documents are and all that other kind of stuff.
So committee right now is a committee of one from what I gathered. So I'll be reaching out to get a few folks to help just with the annual appeal that we want to do our campaign, and again adding the special staff hall of fame and that as well. Other questions? John?
Any questions for Dennis? He's actually going to continue on with engagement, right?
So before you do that, one thing, Nancy and I had several meetings. I want to remind everybody that the money we raised in fiscal '23 is actually the money we will spend in fiscal '24. We don't raise it as we use it. So there's been a lot of confusion around that recently.
All right. So yeah, we started, that's a Florida shirt, by the way. Taken at my house in Florida. So anyway, I was asked to start this engagement committee. We're brand new out of the gate, so it's like, you know, what do we want to do? So it's mainly to try to reach out to membership and get them involved in some element, committee, function, what have you. So since I was in Florida over the winter, we've had our first Florida JASAN luncheon, and there's your starting lineup. Recognize some of those folks' names at least. The picture's kind of small, but I was telling somebody about getting Rich, it's not Rick anymore. Rich Maladecki to join us was a big win. He's a great guy, retired from the Orlando Visitors Bureau, where he ran that organization forever. But it was great seeing everyone, and it was hosted at the J offices in Orlando. And thanks to John, he picked up the cost of the luncheon. Couldn't be there, but yeah, it was good. And we're hoping to do more of these. I got Tammy and Godsey and Deborah Hendricks interested in trying to pull one together in Orlando, or I'm sorry, in Colorado Springs. There's enough kind of critical mass there. And we're going to do another one in Orlando in January. So that's one big element we got off the ground. And then, John, if you want to move forward, we had some connection calls in April. Again, I think, you know, Jack was mentioning the presidents with our membership. And those were fun. It's great to see folks and catch up using Zoom. And we've had the same day, we had one in the afternoon and one in the evening, and yeah, it was great to be part of that. To see some of us were present that are here now. All right, John? And then we also added an element to our social media and our newsletter, and that is doing these member spotlights. So we had our two volunteers to come forward. We asked Sean O'Hara and Heather Rogers. You can find those, I think, on our social media page, and also we online too with some other element. So those are going to continue, but I'm passing the torch to Tio, who's here, who came from the state of Indiana, who's our new chair. And so we're, and I'm going to stay involved if you need me. So, okay? I think that's it. Questions?
Great job.
Dennis, I want to thank you for all your work and
What are you doing?
keeping our mission alive. A little token of my appreciation for
Hey,
everything
thanks,
that you've
John.
done.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you, I
Dennis.
appreciate that.
Miss Sally, I think you're up next.
I am, but I'll take a page out of his book. I'm going to stay seated. I have a big enough mouth that it will carry. The history of JA is important to me. I'm a product of the after-school program, so I'm old school. So I was excited to get involved with this, and I think this is very timely looking at our history. We had a terrific museum at our national headquarters. That is now, if you go to the next slide, it's been packed up. It was fabulous for the years we had it. If you keep scrolling through the slides, you will see that that's what we have today. So this has been, this year has just been a lot of brainstorming. I had calls with many of you, and I thank you for your time. We looked at and discussed museums around the country. It is very difficult to find the right fit for our history in a museum. And again, it's a very limited, how many people will be in, if it's a small town especially, are going to go just to see it. I got excited and spent quite a bit of time talking to the marketing companies that deal with the airports. There's always something. It could be the Army has a poster. I noticed when I came here. Sometimes nonprofits, businesses. Sometimes you have displays running down a corridor, artwork from local kids. Talk to them. There's about 4 main airport marketing companies. Some of them have, and of course I had to start with my market, Norfolk, which is a smaller market. It really would take an in with those marketing companies, and even with very generous support of nonprofits, it's number one, a cost. Number 2, how do we get stuff there and back? So here's I'm prompting you to start thinking. We looked at and discussed briefly, what about area offices? Is there an interest? Is there room? How do we get the materials there? What happens if there's damage? Who unpacks it? Who packs it? Where does it go when it leaves that office? So we've not necessarily come up with, aha, we haven't. And as I heard Jack talking, a lot about technology. And maybe that might be where we begin to go. So if you will keep going through those slides real quick, I think the next one I've already covered. Yeah, that's what we have to think about. And then the next one, I kind of brought those up. What I'm looking for now are your thoughts. Help us here. I am also a one-man band on this committee. But I've involved some of you. I think our history is critical. Especially, our roots, just like any other company. How do we get it out there? And I'm wondering if something virtual. So give me some ideas, please, so that I can start working with key people at National to, want to be able to bring them some thoughts instead of, what do you think? I'd rather go to them and say, here are a couple thoughts we had, here's what we've looked into, we think we have a decent plan, and then let them try to shoot it down. If that's what they choose. So I want some ideas, please.
I'm thinking now, I just spaced the name, but the documentarian filmmaker does national parks and every historical thing, you know who I mean? Ken Burns, thank you. So that name is popping in my head. So
Thank you.
is it a documentary because we're a century old and we've had this impact on society and the economy and people?
Thank you.
I don't know.
Thank you, yes.
In looking at the things that you've brought up and some of the different options, to me it seems like they're all going to have a very small target market.
Yes.
And you're not going to get much exposure. Even in an airport, people are going to kind of walk by and stuff. It seems like that something digital And especially if you can find the right placements where people will get to it, I think that's going to probably provide the broadest audience and opportunity. So I think that holds some merit.
I had to start somewhere, and I'm not creative, so you guys are helping me. Yes, ma'am.
Beyond the exposure, which is a big issue, I was thinking that if you did have a traveling something, doesn't have to be everything, that could be a fundraising effort in all the local areas. They could have a big event around, here comes the display, the history of JA. So it's a way we could work with the JA areas, but maybe we could just pick pieces out, not, it doesn't have to be the whole darn thing. Some kind of a traveling entity. Seems to me it would be fun and an opportunity.
And most of your JA areas that have capstone facilities would have room for it. So that it wouldn't be moved around a lot. If you send it to a small area that doesn't, only just has an office, they're going to take it out, show their donors or whatever, that's not going to work. But capstone facilities may offer some opportunities.
Or they could bring it to a venue where they have an event, so it doesn't necessarily have to be on display for a long time.
Yeah.
Again, all that's in Colorado Springs, and I live in Virginia. Yeah, although I like to travel, I couldn't go pack it up each time, so there's a lot of logistics, but I want to go through these and let's
Right.
find a plan.
It's one of the first things I thought of, John. Our Hall of Fame stuff goes to the Cincinnati Historical
This side.
Society. They've already got a display that has our Hall of Fame people. If something like that, if other areas have that might be a good place for some of it.
Well, I was thinking about the traveling exhibit, I did too, and you could partner at museums, like you're saying, if you don't have a capstone building, then you could have, because they all have, museums have traveling exhibits, and I know Evansville has a partnership with the museum as well too, with their Business Hall of Fame. So,
I was just there recently and I was going through it all and, they already have an area for the JA Hall of Fame, so I would think that, that would be a possibility.
And also advertising in it. Didn't take care of the
yeah,
cost.
yeah.
Good idea.
Nothing to be about that.
I can't.
Anything else for Sally?
Thank you.
So this conversation is what to do with the stuff that came out of Colorado Springs, is that right? Who cares about it?
That question was asked of me several times.
I don't know, I think it's our legacy. I think a lot of people would care about it.
So there's a differentiation in my mind between the stuff that came out of Colorado Springs and how to tell the historical perspective of JA. What comes alive for me when I was in the museum in Colorado Springs was the stories that got told around those memorabilia and pictures. I think that's the value of a static display. But beyond that, I see no value in a static display of any kind. And I would encourage you, if you're focusing on what to do with the stuff that came out of Colorado Springs, digitize it. It's the only way it's going to mean anything to anybody. And you may even be able to get people that helped build the movement to narrate but I would urge us not to spend a lot of money on the rearview mirror.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean a lot to people. I'm more concerned about how we're telling our story, and we're way behind transcribing history documents on problems as an editor. So I just think there's two issues. One, digitize it.
Thank you.
I don't know what else you're going to do with it without spending a lot of money, honestly.
Has anybody asked Jim Hemack how he feels about it?
Yep.
He's the one, what was his response?
He wants to see something. He has not, in the conversations I've had with Jim and Sally, I don't know about you, he's not been directive at all. And to your point, Don, it's the stories around the stuff. Heckler's has digitized everything they can. Ed has not been able to give us an inventory list because they don't have one. And then we also need to remember that we have stuff at the archives at IUPUI in Indianapolis. So I don't think we've ever articulated it the way you said it, Don, but it really is about the stories.
And
the
that's,
stuff becomes a catalyst.
and that said, I wonder, I don't know much about StoryCorps, but we hear those things on the radio, and they're usually very personal stories, but maybe the organization, that's the kind of organization that would put together those stories. I don't know
Thank you.
what they do.
But that's storytelling, that's the same words Jack said, that's a part of the strategic plan. And so you do go down the path of a virtual reality or virtual, some kind of virtual experience that they get the story.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Sally,
John.
I think it's stepping back out of, in this room, we have a passion. And so, yeah, we think everybody else is going to have it. Outside of JA, I don't think there's going to be that passion.
Donald's not the first person that flat out said he
I don't
can't.
think that that's going to be there. So the audience for this is really internal. And I see it as the audience that's in that other room over there, that record number of attendees, to show them where this organization has come from and what they're currently operating on. We laid the foundation, not us, but everything back. That is where they are, and I think it makes that connection.
Thank you. So one of the things that is part of the onboarding, at least at JA headquarters, is a history video, which now they extracted that piece, strictly the history, and we have it up on our website. But it's pretty dated.
Sal, are you doing this by yourself?
I am a one-man band, but I think I just added this conflict to my
I promise you, I have nothing to contribute. But I am very familiar with history and what do you do with it. And doing this by yourself is probably impossible.
Great.
Particularly given the nature of the physical location of the memorabilia. And I remember what was in the lobby, but I also remember the storeroom.
Yeah.
That was full, additionally meaningful things.
A lot of that stuff a few years ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, before they moved, was shipped to IU.
Yeah.
Where
But I
is
would
this?
really encourage, I'm sorry, I would really encourage you to think about expanding and having a history team or something. that
Oh,
can
absolutely.
I just spent this year kind of trying to get my arms around it
Yeah.
and talking to a lot of people to get, and really, I think I guess the bottom line is walking in here, I really feel like we've pretty much gone through any kind of traveling display museum, and I was very much hoping to hear technology, digitalized, so thank you. And yes, I would definitely recruit some volunteers, because I think now it's beyond just me brainstorming.
I think one of the things we should pay attention to is to not create any conflict with the national organization process.
Yeah, so
They went
kind
through
of-
this in 2019 when they figured out how do we tell our story at the 100th
Right.
mark. And this can be a sticking point when you have a passionate group of other folks that look at history, want to say something, or that can get misconstrued.
I
pretty
think
heavily.
JASAN's relationship with National has come a very long way in the
Yeah,
last few years, and I certainly am not going to be the one to put my foot in it, so, thank you.
Gary, did you have a question? Comment?
Well, coming from both sides, you know,
Yeah.
I've had fun here and understand both sides of the coin, Don, so do you. You know, when we talk about stories about impact drives revenue, and everyone's, it's important to create a story that says where you are, where you came from, but also more important where we're going. And so what they're talking about in the organization now is what kind of impact, where we're going. So that's really, really important, but we don't want to forget where we came from. So how you bond the two together is critical in creating your quick story, whether you're telling the donor about elementary, middle school, high school, college, you know, global story. And then it's hard to create a story, very succinct, but I think it's all very, very important. And clearly the conflict between, you know, a museum to a story
Thank you, everyone.
I just was going to add something. I just, in 2014, when I was president of Pittsburgh, we had our 75th anniversary. We hosted the NLC. It was like a perfect kind of alignment there. And we did a lot of locally based kind of stuff. We had gotten, and maybe we as an organization, and Jenny's saying, kind of a playbook that we give to a local area to say, if you want to research or showcase your history, this is some things you could do. Because again, I'd rather tell a story about junior achievement, if I was president, junior achievement, what's going on in, say, Pittsburgh or Dallas or New York City versus the world or the nation. So if you can feature, again, because some areas have been in business for a very long time, you probably, you can get a subscription to archives, newspaperarchives.com, and you'd be surprised what you'll find. I mean, literally. I have a friend that writes history books in the world of sports, and that's his #1 go-to. He's coming out with his 35th book on sports, and he starts with the newspapers and goes through that to get kind of some base information, and then starts interviewing relatives or people that were part of it. But perhaps we come up with some kind of a cookbook to share with local markets on how they're serious, and then you use that to post, on this date, this happened, on, 10 years ago we did this, and again, it's more of a localized story that you can tell when you use social media. I went to our history center, and I asked them on our 75th anniversary, and they're affiliated with Smithsonian. He said, we'll give you the space. We won't charge you any rent, but it's up to you to create what you're going to put in there, and it's your own dime, it's your own cost. But
Yeah.
and we started looking a little bit into that. Like, well, because we had some archive kinds of stuff that we had laying around, and we thought maybe that would be part of the display.
And when we put the videos from the Cincinnati Hall of Fame into the museum, we had to go back and have closed caption, and I don't know, we spent a lot of money to get them ready to put on the kiosk. Well, Sally, thank you for all that
I'm
you've
sorry
done.
I took so much time.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Not necessary.
And I think I'll pitch it next for Tammy. Tammy couldn't make it. She had some family conflicts. Talk about membership committee. Here's some of our members. Lucy, you were part of this, weren't you, at one time? I don't know why your picture didn't rate.
I'm still in it, but that's okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
I looked at this, I'm saying, okay. And I'll tell you, I didn't look at it until the other night because I've been on vacation and different things. But here's the committee goals: was continue to use the social media and other tools to identify and connect with new members, recruit 12 new members, work with the engagement committee, continue membership spotlights and in-person gatherings. And you heard Dennis talk about some of that. They recruited 11 new members. Start member spotlights to learn more about each other. We did 2 of those, as you've seen. Hosted an in-person membership luncheon in Florida in January 23. We were going to actually try to do one in 22, but we had to call it off because of the scare of COVID. So this past year was our first one. Successfully hosted a virtual connection call for the members in April, and continue to use our social media presence and engagement with our 319 potential members. Here's the new members that recruited. About a fourth of those are from Tampa, so I need Richard to leave more people go so I can recruit more members. Those are some of the folks that have been pictured, or that we've got their pictures, and there's a couple that we don't have pictures on.
All right, going to hit on the things that we do with under the staff recognition and the awards part. One of the things that we do sponsor every year is the Carl Flimke Achievement Awards. These are the 6 finalists for this year. The winner will be announced tomorrow. I think that's at the dinner tomorrow night. And that recipient will receive $1,000 stipend from Junior Achievements. And Nancy, whenever that gets announced, whoever it is, we can figure that part out and get that all taken care of, however that works. So that's one of the awards. One of the other things that we do is we give the Sweeney Award. So this year for the Sweeney Award, this goes to either a junior or senior that's in the JA Company program, and their company had to be one of the 10 Company of the Year finalists. And this year, we had 22 applications for the scholarship, which set a record, at least for recent times. The 2 previous years I've done this, it was like 12 and 15. 2 years ago, we increased the scholarship award from $1,000 to $2,000 to kind of offset the rising cost of education. And we narrowed it down to 5. We interviewed 5. The committee that did the interviewing with myself was John Box, Lisa Cox, Allison Farr, Christy Fagan, and Lucy O'Donnell. And so we did that, and this is our recipient, Jacob from Northern California. So interesting thing in the interviews this year, we had 2 of our finalists who stated their company was directly impacted by the failure of Silicon Valley Bank. Whether a vendor or a customer, something in that, or a bounce check. Which I think that was Jacob as he referenced that.
Do we
So
follow
that
those
was kind of-
scholarship winners?
Do what?
Do we follow those scholarship winners?
I don't think that we've ever really
That's a
followed
story.
followed up with them. It is true, because we know who they are, we know where they went. I see Lucy writing this down. The last area in the scholarship and recognition part is our JASAN NLC scholarships. And this has been a really exciting initiative because we really are helping from the standpoint, as we came out of the pandemic, the whole concept of how do we get these people re-engaged personally, because it had been 2 or 3 years since that had happened. And getting these people to NLC was one of the key things. And so I want to give credit to Marty for heading up the initiative and doing the funding campaign that went way beyond what we ever had. We ended up, what our commitment has been is over a 3-year period, 175 $1,000 scholarships to NLC. Last year we did 75. We're doing 50 this year, and you'll meet those 50 at the scholarship breakfast tomorrow morning. And then next year we have the commitment to round that out with an additional 50. And then a part of, I know Linda's discussion is where do we go from here type of thing. So Marty, again, thanks, because last year it was really interesting when John asked the room, how many of you are attending your first NLC? It was the vast majority of the 75 people that were in that room. And many of the comments that we got was they would not have been able to attend if it hadn't been for that, because this was able for them to add an additional person from their office coming to NLC. So anyway, that's one of the key things, one of the big initiatives. So I'll talk on the logistics tomorrow morning when we get to housekeeping type of things, I guess at the end of this and all. But I do hope that you'll be there for that scholarship breakfast, a chance to meet these individuals. And they are selected, kind of the criteria, new presidents, but also one of the things we did with this is open it up to all field staff, regardless of seniority, regardless of position. So you've got a lot of 1 year and 2 year, or not a lot, but there are some 1 year, 2 year program managers in there, because they're identified in the talent development process as being high potential. They're seeing something in the talent development that is saying, this is somebody we really want to develop, so this is a tool that JA is using to get those high potential people here so they can experience that. So, so that's kind of that part. Wrapping up, Lucy is going to be stepping in. I'm giving up the scholarship and awards part. So Lucy is going to be stepping in this next year. She's been kind of shadowing and a part of some of the things, and we'll do a good debrief after all of the dust settles.
I'm intimidated. You are tough shoes to follow.
And not a problem. You'll have it handled without any problem whatsoever. So any questions there before we roll into, I think, what one of the big topics is on the Hall of Fame?
I do have a quick question.
Yeah.
I thought I heard, Linda, that you didn't think that our follow-up with those NLC scholarship winners was that effective, that Zoom thing that we did. Did I misinterpret that?
No, it really, kind of the feedback was, we did a recap with National afterwards, and they said, you know, it really didn't do that much. And so said, okay, because everybody is so busy, we kind of move it just really didn't have that type of impact that we were hoping it would have.
So we were doing no follow-up with these scholarship winners?
Not in that sense, no. So really, yeah, no, we're giving them in, we kind of know what the impact is with NLC, but there is no formal follow-up that we've got in place.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So on to the Hall of Fame. Last year at this meeting, we had just, I think, kind of introduced the concept that we were being asked to bring the Hall of Fame back. Jack had contacted us and said, we'd really like to see the Hall of Fame coming back in, and we think JASAN is the right organization to drive this and to be the sponsor of the organization. So, kind of because I had worked somewhat with the Hall of Fame and trying to get it brought back in and formalized right before I retired, I ended up kind of in this position again. It was like...
Thank you, Randal.
Oh, here we go again. So, put together just a small group myself. I want to thank John Weil and Howard Bartner. We said, okay, let's put a little small group together, because Howard had worked with it somewhat from the headquarters standpoint as well, knew it. I kind of knew some of it as well. So let's get this thing and let's get a structure and a framework in place. So we got to rolling and we got to working on it. So we came back. If you go back one, John. This is the purpose that we came up with for the Hall of Fame, the purpose statement for the Hall of Fame. And there's some other criteria underneath that and all that, that gets into it. It does, one of the requirements is you do have to have had 10 years of experience with junior achievement. You have to have left in good standing. You have to have been gone for 3 years from a professional standpoint. So there's a little bit of a gap in there. And so what we did is we went back, and because we were kind of reorganizing and restructuring, said we need to go back and really take a back look. Not just people that retired just recently, but a back look. Because with this new criteria and new way of looking at it, we felt like that there may have been some folks that were overlooked. So we went to headquarters and said, we'd like to have a list of everybody that left junior achievement and meets the 10-year good standing type qualification. I think we got about 700 people on that list. So our first step was, and John, you can go to the next step, is to create a vetting committee. This is a committee that looked at that list of 700 people, and they narrowed it down to, I guess you could kind of call semifinalists. This is a group of people, not necessarily that they're going to come into the Hall of Fame, but these are people that we said, okay, they need a little bit of a deeper look, And so this got narrowed down to a smaller list that then went on to the finalist committee. And John chaired that, and this is a group that looked at that list of people and said, okay, who should be finalists? And in our criteria, we can have up to 5 finalists. And this gets back to Dennis's question. We can have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or we can have 0. Because we don't want this to be an automatic award, because we want it to be where it maintains that integrity and that, from that standpoint. So the group went through, they identified finalists, and then we put forward to a group of 13 electors. I was the chair of the electors, but I was a non-voting chair. So one of the things we've tried to do in this, by going through those 3 different layers and different people involved, is we've really maintained the integrity but the transparency with this. And we're putting these names up here because in the old format, you never saw any of these names. Everything was very, very secret, and we want transparency in this to know who the folks were. You had to get 10 out of the 13 votes. There are 13 electors. Each elector had 3 votes, so they could vote for 3 people. They can't pool their votes all into one person, but they could get they could vote for up to 3 people. They could vote for 0, 1, 2, or 3. Under our mathematics, the maximum number of people that would ever be inducted would be 3. It's impossible for it to go beyond that. Our feeling is, for the most cases, it's going to be a 1 or 2 type situation. So it'll kind of self-select. But we did 2 past laureates. We did 6 JASAN at large, 2 active presidents, and then 3 JAUSA senior executives. These people did not know who they were, and in fact, most of them will not know who the others were until they see this on the slide, either tonight or tomorrow at lunch. And that's again to maintain the integrity so there is no politicking that takes place in the process. So these votes go back to, that's done electronically. It actually goes back to HUD, and then HUD and John and I got together on a Zoom call and confirmed the votes. We did not see who voted for who or any way like that, but HUD just said, here's the votes and all, and John and I confirmed the votes. So we kind of keep that, again, the integrity, so there are multiple eyes touching everything at every part of the process. So tonight we have a dinner where we'll be honoring Don. We're excited to do that. And Don, this is probably the first time you're actually seeing this. So this is the award. We're actually getting it from the same company that does the MVP award for JAUSA. So, so this is it. And Don, by the way, we will not award it to you tonight, though it will be awarded tomorrow, because we didn't want to give it to you tonight and then say, okay, give it back. We got to give it to you again tomorrow. So,
Building anticipation.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is the award. So tonight is our time, so that we have the opportunity to really, in a smaller group, recognize Don. Tomorrow will be the formal induction, which will take place in the big room with the 300 plus, however many they've got in the big room, and all from that standpoint. So it's been we're excited to have this back, and really thrilled, and we think we've got a really good choice for the introduction of laureates, this process coming back. Any questions on the Hall of Fame?
I just wanted to ask you, I was honored to be asked to be part of the vetting committee. I don't know, we had a name, that's cool. I have a resume.
Well, thank you all. It's been a pleasure to have you here. We're going to go through the election process of the officers and look at the proxies that we have, and Kylie, correct me if I do anything wrong here, make sure everything's legal. So the member voting results and the executive committee operating budget and program of work we're going to approve. For the executive committee, and you can see across the board for all of them, I'm not going to read through each one of them, they all passed 94-0.
Yeah.
This is the officers and the executive committee for next year. Am I supposed to be doing this? Is this Linda's?
No, this is you.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And I'm sure you know who you are if you're going to be on there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Linda for the 23-24 program of work.
Okay, so before I do that, John, you should come and thank us, but we really need to thank you. Your leadership over the last 2 years and the things you've done before that, and especially with things like the Hall of Fame and navigating headquarters, really has set me up for huge success, which creates a legacy for this organization. So
Thank you.
Okay, program will work. And we're actually going to come back to this tomorrow, but I just want to kind of introduce a couple of things to you. So we have 4 key initiatives. Somebody taught me years and years and years ago that most people can only do 3 to 5 things well. So there's no point in having more than 5 things on your high priority list. So I kind of like 4 better. So I'm not going to read it to you. These are the 4 big buckets that we do things in, and easily accessible for the history. I really think demonstrates part of what we were talking about a little earlier. Next. Okay. So in terms of supporting JAUSA, and tomorrow I really wanted to have some in-depth conversation on some of these things. We have not had, because we haven't needed to, a what are we going to look like in the next 5 or 10 years discussion since, Don, when was that meeting that you all did in Atlanta?
2017. I think 2017,
February of, yeah, about like that.
18.
Okay, because that's when McIntosh picked up the phone
Right.
and called me and said, we really think you should be the one to figure out what we need to be called. That was a while ago. But we need to have some of that in-depth conversation again. We just haven't needed to, and then the pandemic got in the way. So this is what we do currently in terms of supporting JAUSA. And then in terms of keeping the history alive, I mentioned earlier that our website has nothing about JASAN's history. Neither website, our website or JA.org, has any information about the Professional Hall of Fame laureates. And because those people have all left JA, in the short run, we're gonna own that piece, just to make sure it gets up there. Our website links to a lot of things on JA.org's website because it's easier and cheaper and we don't have to keep it up to date, like all those program names. We know there are people who need to be interviewed that haven't been, and we need to get them done candidly before they go. So we're gonna make a list of who's missing. I think somebody mentioned the fact we still have interviews that have to be transcribed. So we need to find a transcription company. We have 18, I think is what Pamela told me, audio files of these interviews that range from 2 to 3 hours in discussion time. And they need to be transcribed before we can edit them, before we can put them on the website so somebody can read a transcript. And the editing process, if you've never done it, I would really encourage you to because it's really fun. Doesn't sound like it might be. The editing process is not to be a book editor. The editing process is to make sure the story is accurately understood. Because we have our own language, as does any organization. And these transcribers are literally transcribing. So if you've never done one of those, let me know or let HUD know and we'll connect you with Pamela Castile. But we need to have more of those done and figure out what to do with the museum.
Hey Linda, on the bullet point for the museum to be seen by more people, in light of the discussion, you may want to change
Yes.
see to access, something like that.
Thank you. That makes a lot of
That more
sense.
implies a physical presence.
Yeah. If you'll help me with that, so that when I get back, I can write it down. No, you're right. We had already done some wordsmithing around this, around all of this, to hope that it was clear. And we did specifically some things around electronic platforms, recognizing that most of our membership is going to look at things electronically and not on a piece of paper. Knowing that I think it's 50% of our membership works part or full-time, if not more. We are going to invest in our LinkedIn opportunities, and Greg Munson is going to do that. So we will have a much more robust LinkedIn profile. So we should pop on searches for people. So if Tom decides he wants to raise money for other organizations, he can go hunting for people and he can then be found. So in retirement, I certainly have not done anything with my LinkedIn profile, but if it helps JSAN, I will. And then you will still do newsletters, continue to do electronic. If somebody does not have an email, then we'll send her a copy. So we're only going to use 2 social media sites, LinkedIn and Facebook. We're not doing Instagram. God knows we're not doing TikTok. And whatever it is that Meta just introduced, we're not doing that one either. And that was based on who are our primary customers. And those are people who generally at this point, we don't have an Instagram story to tell that we've been able to articulate. So if we can ever get there, we will. And then the newsletters. And then finally, you gotta have cash. As Francis Hesselbein said, no money, no mission. So we have to have some. And we were really broad in the definition of that, so that we can move the organization forward. So that's the depth that goes with each of the key points. Again, tomorrow I really would like to take these 4 things individually and have a deeper conversation. I just wanted you to be able to see them besides having gotten them through the vote. And you can access them if you want to through the QR code that's on your table tab. Any short-term questions on this? Okay. Coming attractions. Tonight's dinner is about a 7-minute walk. A few stories from Marty about Dawn. Just thought I'd share that. And then Don will get to talk to us for as long as Don chooses. That's what it says on the agenda. And then we'll disperse. So I really just want to do 2 things in the next 20 minutes, which is not a lot of time. Actually, I want to do 3 things. Maybe 4. Still not a lot of time. First thing I want to do, and I think John and I kind of both missed this yesterday. HUD is amazing. If you've not worked with them, Gene Richford used to call him the wizard behind the curtain. And we couldn't do this without HUD. There's no question about it. So I really appreciate you and what you do. Yeah, I really did want to spend some time on the program of work. Not realistic today. We'll figure out another way to do it where we can get broader input than only from the executive committee. So we do need that broader input. Randal this morning was spot on roadmap.
Again.
Yeah.
Again.
So, Lucy, I'm here to support you on that. I mean, I'm serious. So, if you have any ideas, thoughts, suggestions, heard anything from the other folks at your table, pass them on to Lucy. I heard one thing, Christy brought to my attention. Someone at her table suggested that on our public directory, because there's a PDF document that anybody can download the names of our members in the last area they served, to add where the city or JA area they currently live in to that. So that is on my to-do list, and so HUD will figure out the easiest way to make that happen, and then just update that directory. So I was real excited about that. So it's nice to be able to have low-hanging fruit where we can go back and pretty quickly say, yep, we're doing that.
If you want my help as far as where someone is at, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I think we have it in our membership directory. So, and we've got both of those pieces of information. We have the area they last served, and we have where they live, their address. So,
members only section.
well, yeah. No, I'm not thinking website. We have a members directory that lists all kinds of information about everybody. And included in that information is the last area they served, when they retired, not that we need that, but their current address. Now, that could be out of date. Sometimes those are not accurate, but
We also need to respect privacy,
exactly.
which is why what's on our website is name and last area served, but we could say resides in the JA Dallas franchise.
Exactly.
And, and that will protect people's privacy.
Yeah.
And then we don't have to ask them for permission to do it.
Yeah, and that might take some tweaking because the areas better. I might live in a certain city, but I'm a different franchise than that city.
Right. So I just thought that was great.
And then obviously the next step would be then to promote to the area offices, check the JASAN website to see if there is a JASAN person that might be able to assist you.
Yeah. So once we run all those crafts, we'll publicize it internally within our membership group, and then we'll figure it all out. So I thought that was good. For those of you, I did have a couple of field folks that I didn't know come up and say, would which made me feel good because I had help, that they didn't realize they could join JASAN at 5 years, having left the organization. So that was really rewarding. And people who've been in JASAN didn't know all the things that we do.
So I'm just curious, and maybe there's a different attitude. I know there's pros and cons of this, but it's hard sometimes to hear something, remember it. And I don't know if a little pamphlet that you could leave with the people when they're up there, I don't know if it's a valuable proposition or not. And again, it's how do we keep our name in front of those potential members?
And one of the people who came up to me, because I said, you know, maybe now that you've heard it the fourth time, because we've been doing it since 2019, because that was really the first time we got some stage time beyond the retirement lunch and the flunky. She said, well, I haven't been to a conference since 19, and the one before that was in 2011. So, I agree with you multiple times, we just need to think about how they do that. So, okay, and then the last thing I want to do, the final thing I want to do before we take our group picture, is Marty started this when he was chair. And
All right.
I want to recognize and remember the people that we lost this year. And I think that's really important. So we made a decision as an organization a couple of years ago that for the most part, we will only send a full announcement when a JASAN member passes. And other than that, it will go on the Facebook page. So that's how we made the decision to keep it easy, relatively. And then the other piece is whatever we put in an announcement is approved by the family. So just so, for those of you who don't know how we get to that, now you know. And there's always permission. So, and I haven't asked anybody to do this because it dawned on me yesterday I had forgotten about this. So that was not a good thing. So the people we lost this past year were Dale Baxter, Carolyn McDowell, Shelley Morningstar, Lugene Proctor, and then our dear friend Judy Russell. So if anybody wants to share anything about any of those 5 individuals, I would open the floor to that. I'll go ahead and start with Carolyn and with Judy. Carolyn and I were in PDX together. So that goes back a few weeks. When she was in the regional office in St. Louis, Jim and I visited them a couple of times, and Carolyn was always just a phone call away. Someone who looked at the world as an adventure and really went out and found how to fulfill her personal passions through JA. And was one of the women that I truly looked up to, even though we started our president roles at the same time. She had a much more diverse background than mine. And then what can I say about Judy? She sold my house in Colorado Springs. I almost went to work for Kenny when he was in Springfield. They were our second family when we lived in Colorado Springs. Judy helped my grandson decide where to buy a house. Actually, when my grandson and his wife first moved to Colorado Springs, he's in the Army. I called Judy, and Judy said he has no business buying a house. Colorado Springs market, 840 square foot house, 18 months ago, $350,000. So he ultimately did buy a house because he wanted to be settled for his son and all of that. But without Judy's guidance, I think they would have bought in the wrong place at the wrong time. Anyone who ever went to Colorado Springs, Kenny and Judy were there. And we just knew that. So, those were the 2 I knew best. I knew Dale this much. I didn't know Shelley at all, and I knew of Lucy. So if anybody else has any words, I'm just going to open the floor, and I'm going to sit down.
I can Shelley Morningstar, actually. She convinced me to be on the East Hampton Music Board. and that's how I met her through BCRN, and she was very funny, and she was instrumental in those of us that were pilots. It was a nightmare. And she actually made it easy.
She was good at what she did.
She was so good.
I would echo the
Yeah.
comments.
What market was she in?
I don't remember.
Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids.
Oh, okay.
She was not your typical JA employee, but she got the job done, and
Yeah.
you knew she was doing the right things for the right reasons. She loved it.
And she had fun doing it.
Yeah.
She was, I mean, she was funny, a little, I mean, maybe not Ed funny, but. But she was, I mean, again, being a pilot was a nightmare, and she actually made it funny sometimes. So.
Can someone talk to Dale? I think you guys.
I was just gonna say, I worked with Dale a little bit when I was in the regional office, and I understand he highly educated, very intelligent, very intense. You didn't want to get into a debate with him because he'd carry the day every day. But I understand that get a drink into him, be at a bar or be at a piano, he had an amazing voice, kind of thing. So just a really good guy. And, the staff conference at Keystone, where I came from the field to national, he chaired that. And, that was kind of big also, and then ultimately had to kind of know him and his family.
Talk about Carolyn first. Don and I did not sleep in the same hotel room, but Carolyn and Jan Tesh spent the night in my one-bedroom apartment with me one night, and I fed them grits the next morning.
Nice.
Eating grits. And I had to sleep in a chair so they could have the bed. Carolyn was, and Jan were a pair. I don't know if you ever saw them together, but they were an amazing pair together. And Hamner, remember, there were three of them were the AE, Applied Economics team. So, but I have a lot of fond memories of Carolyn, and I can hear her voice still to this day. She was that prominent. Dale was very interesting. Dale was probably one of the smartest men we ever had in the organization. He actually had all the requirements for a PhD, but he just never did the final step that he needed to get to it. But if you ever sat down and talked to him, that man could talk to you about anything. He was really, really a great man. I thoroughly enjoyed sitting down and just talking to him. He was a big man, too.
Yeah, just to add that Judy and Ken were an amazing couple, and they were meant to be for each other in many ways. Judy and Ken and a few other couples, my wife and I we did a lot of stuff socially together, and there was about 5 or 6 couples
team
Was
is
Jackie
working
Burbess, did she die in the last year or was that longer?
Before.
Before.
What's the other name again? Proctor?
Mike Proctor was her son, and Ray Olson was her brother.
Wow,
That's what I have learned.
wow, wow.
So it was very connected, Salt Lake, JA.
Well, we will continue, unfortunately, to lose people, and we'll continue to remember them each year. And Marty, I appreciate you starting that several years ago.
I didn't, I got Donna McCann started, she called me and said, would you start doing this?
Oh, okay.
That's how it got going. She was the one that thought we should do something to honor people, and so we just kind of pushed the way we did.